Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Byrd, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Together, we will rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage from being something to dread into a beautiful transition. I'm really excited about this episode today. I have on the podcast Allison Marietta. She is a former attorney turned business coach, helping moms find joy, purpose, and wealth doing what they love from home. And her target market is women 40 and up, so like me. And we met on social media. We both kind of aligned with each other's vision for women. And this was the first time I got to talk to her, quote, in person, but have a conversation with her. And it was a lot of fun. I took a lot from it. I think that I felt like the questions she was asking me helped provide me with some insight in my own career. And I was thinking to myself, wow, if this is how she coaches women, they are certainly lucky to be working with her. So I hope you take away some great information from this episode. You learn a little bit about what it feels like to step into that fear a little bit and try doing something that you love for you. If you're a mom, maybe you have a full-time job, but it's just not fulfilling you. Or maybe you're a stay-at-home mom and you want to do something that's just for you. This episode will definitely help you kind of get that fire burning and ready to go. So let me know what you think about this episode. Comment, share, review, all the things. But most importantly, I really hope that you enjoy my conversation with Allison. So hi, Allison. Thank you so much for joining me. And it's really funny that I'm saying hello to you right now because I think we've been talking for, I don't know, like 20 minutes before we even hit record. Mm-hmm. So we've never met in person. I don't think we've ever actually even had conversation, just messages through social media back and forth. You resonated with me. I'd like to think I resonated with you. And I thought, you know, what you do for women and the career path that you've taken, a lot of people need to hear about, because I think that this episode will come out in January. And this is that month of resolutions, goals, ideas, like starting fresh. And as much as I don't do resolutions, they don't work for me. And I think completely overhauling your life is a very scary and probably not as successful prospect as looking at things and reflecting and saying, you know, what do I want for myself this year? And a lot of women in our age group, we're getting, our kids are beginning to think about launching out, or they're starting to drive, having a little bit more independence. They need us less, or we've had this hunger and pain inside of us of there's something more. We love being moms, but there's something more to our life and our passions than just being a mom or the career that we're in that we may not love. And so I wanted to talk to you about, you took this leap and you left a career that you have, very safe career that you had, and you decided to launch this business. So I want to get into it with you because I'm really excited to hear about what made you face the fear, take the jump, and all the things.
Well, first of all, I'm so excited to be here, and I want to thank you for asking me to come on. I feel like this is going to be a really great conversation too. You know, I am so passionate about helping women 40 and over. So I'm so excited about this. I love that we met on Instagram. I think that Instagram can get such a bad rap sometimes, but I feel like attracts like. And when you're being authentic and you're showing up as yourself, you're going to attract that right back to you, right? And I think that's why you and I connected and why we're here today. And it's an amazing time. I mean, you're across the United States and we're chatting right now. Like, I love it. It's awesome, right? I also love that you touched on so many of us feel like this hunger, because I feel like that's what I felt. So ever since I was a little girl, I wanted to be an attorney and I wanted to help women. And I thought that's the path that I needed to take, right? And when sometimes when people hear that I wanted to be an attorney and then I ended up being an attorney, a business trial attorney. So I was in court, you know, the whole deal, arguing, you know, motions and stuff and juries in front of a judge. It was very intense. But I think sometimes people think, oh, she must have been smart to do that or something. And can I tell you, like, I got D's in high school. I got C's in middle school. Like, school was the struggle for me. But I think that I was driven so much by this why, by me wanting to help women. It like pushed me through. It like was this power almost that just kept me going forward. And I found myself where I had reached my dream and I was doing it. And I thought that once that I got there, everything was just going to be better, right? I was going to be so happy and I was going to be fulfilled and I was going to be all the things. And it's like I got to the top of what I thought was the mountain and I wasn't. And I was so stressed. I was so anxious. I feel like I wasn't showing up as the wife I wanted to be. I wasn't showing up as the friend, as the daughter, as the, mom I wanted to be because it was so overwhelming. And it was also, I felt really guilty because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just went to all this school. I just, reached this dream that I wanted to do and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I feel like it was really difficult and really hard to understand. Like, what does this look like now? So I remember I was driving home and I had left my daughter. I was still breastfeeding. I had left her and I feel like I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. It's too much, right? I'm not the person that I want to be. It almost brought out all the worst parts of me, like perfectionism and people pleasing and all of those things. So I took a step back and I remember I told my bosses and they were so disappointed and I felt so bad about it. And, then I had people telling me, so you're not going to be an attorney anymore, and it's like people just couldn't understand. I don't know if you went through something similar with, when you were a pharmacist, did you?
Oh yeah. When I told people, especially at work, because my family didn't really understand the concept. It's funny, my dad and both my brothers are attorneys. I'm the only science brain in the house. And so none of them really knew what I did to go to school for it, but they knew it was long and hard and a lot of science. Yep. And they knew I worked as a pharmacist, but nobody really knows what they do behind the counter, really. Yeah. So, and I'm going to toot my own horn. I was really good at my job from not only a pharmacist level, but management and connecting with, I was a target pharmacist and I worked with the floor staff and the store manager and the exec team. And we were all a big part of something bigger. And it was when I told them I was stepping back, they were completely and utterly gutted that I was leaving. And I always felt like I'm replaceable, like somebody else will come in and fill my spot and it'll be fine and you guys will all go. But even going back, I went back and visited and they were like, it has not been the same since you left. And so I really, they were all so much more shocked than my family at what I wanted to do, at the fact that I wanted to step out of the white coat.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I have a very similar, experience with mine. I feel like I still will run into them from time to time and they're like, please come back. We need you. We still need you. Please, please come back. Like, what can we do to get you back? And I feel like it's not me anymore. So I feel like I've moved past that. And then I, started raising my kids full time, for a short amount of time. And I felt like what you were saying, I felt like that hunger, that's such a great way to say it. I felt like that hunger, like I was made for more. I still had this passion to help women. And the other thing I found out too is when I was practicing law, I feel like I wasn't helping women. It was like businessmen fighting over money. And I feel like that just didn't resonate with me. And I did it, and I think I did a really good job at it, but it didn't resonate with me anymore. So I took a step back, and I feel like similar to what you were saying, I loved being a mom, but I was like, is there something more? Is there something else that I can do too? And I think a lot of women struggle with that. We were talking about this before. I think that women think you can either be a mom, stay-at-home mom, or you can go back to work. There's no in between. And we live in this amazing world in 2025 where you can do something else. Like there's an in between, there's an and, where you can actually be a great mom and you can also do what you love and help other women and lead into your passions in these little pockets of time. I mean, we were talking before, like my best working time is when I'm waiting for my son to get done with hockey practice. right? Like it doesn't need to be this like huge thing. And I think that's what's beautiful is just taking these tiny steps. And I don't know if that's how it was for you too, like just taking these tiny steps, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, for me, it was, I mean, my journey to do health coaching went sideways with the pandemic because I was planning on opening a practice. And then just where we live, the fact that my husband was in healthcare, we didn't want to be the reason that he got COVID. So we were like, we'd rather you bring it home to us than us give it to you. So, because he would have to shut down ORs and we were trying to be as cautious as possible. So we decided that we were going to stay home and I was going to homeschool. And never in my life would I ever want to be a homeschool mom, ever. Like never wanted to do it. I did it because I had to. I did it because my kids needed it. I did it because my family needed it in the circumstance. But if somebody asked me today, would you go back to doing it? Unequivocally, no. Like absolutely. It was lovely to have that time with my kids, but to be responsible for their education is just something that I didn't want to go there anymore. So once we stepped out of that, it was like, okay, how can I work them back into school and work up a practice? So it was very slow going. And there's a lot of pulling of trying to navigate how much time things take, building the business, back end things, even something as simple as like editing video for a reel, like having to time manage all the things I needed to get them launched a little bit more first. So it was very slow going in the beginning, but now that they have more time where they're doing their own things independently, I definitely utilize that time. Like you said in the pickup line, I'm checking in with clients, I'm answering messages, I'm thinking about content for podcasts or the next social media post I have to make. So I feel like I'm a better user of my time. I never realized how much time I spent on mindless things or like time that was wasted on doing things that shouldn't take as long as they do or asking for help. Like it shouldn't be my sole responsibility to do the dishes or to do the laundry or, and so asking for help really ended up being what was able to help me launch further, like take this podcast on.
I love it. And I think it's really hard for a lot of moms to ask for help. I know it's still something that I struggle with. I'm kind of like, if I could do it, I should do it, right? Even when it comes to my kids, if I can do it, if it's like, putting their backpacks together or something like that, or making their lunches, if I can do it, I feel like I should do it. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that you're right. I think that, I remember reading a study and it said something like when kids have responsibilities in their homes, they are more confident and they're more resilient because they feel needed. So when mom is doing all these things for them 24/7, it's actually a disservice to them, right? But as moms, we feel like it is a service. Like we feel like it's our job to do all of these things for them. So I love that you asked for help. And I also have to commend you that you were a homeschooler like that, because I definitely couldn't do it either. I feel like I couldn't, but I see these moms doing it and they are crushing it and they are doing amazing. And I have so much respect and admiration for them, but it's definitely not something that I could do either. Never.
Oh, yeah. And I think my biggest takeaway from it was that I was becoming more of a drill sergeant, get your schoolwork done. And it blurred into me being a mom. And I stopped being like the supportive, helpful mom with homework, cheering you on and being the cattle prod to get your stuff done. And that just, it wasn't a great dynamic. So it was definitely best left for the educators. And the homeschool moms that I know, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they create their curriculum and they do it every day. And some of the kids that I have met that have been homeschooled are brilliant and social and engaged and wonderful people that they've launched out, and God bless them for doing it, because I just don't know. I don't know how they do it for longer than, I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel for me. So.
Oh my gosh, I think so too. Do you think that having something for yourself has made you a better mom?
100%. And I think, we were talking before about, I sold jewelry in an MLM style company. And initially it was, I bought a bracelet, got a kit because I wanted the discount, but then I recognized I started sharing it. It actually helped me start dressing better in the day because I wanted to style it, to share it. And so all of a sudden I was getting out of joggers and I was putting on real clothes and doing my hair and makeup and and it felt like it was bigger than just selling a pair of earrings. It was building up my self-confidence. It was giving me a reason to present myself differently. And so this is the same thing. And I feel like this is actually more intellectually aligned with my training, my background. And so I feel like I'm not only presenting myself, I mean, mind you, I'm in a fleece right now, right now in leggings. So I'm like kind of digressing a little bit, but you know, I'm able to present myself academically again. And I enjoy that. I enjoy having those conversations with people that are stimulating and science-y every now and then.
I love it. I feel exactly the same too. I feel like I had felt a little invisible. I had felt lost and stuck and unfulfilled. And I felt really guilty for feeling that way, especially as a mom. And I felt like, oh my gosh, Allison, you should just be grateful. Be more grateful. You know, you hear all this about gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. You should just be more grateful. Be happy for what you have. And I found myself after I started taking those steps forward, same. Like I felt more energy. I felt more joy. I felt happier. I felt like I had more patience. I felt more fulfilled and aligned. And it just made such a shift in every area of my life. You know, I feel like I showed up as a better friend, as a better wife, as a better mom, just having something for myself outside of motherhood again. You know, and it made all the difference for me. But I think that a lot of people don't see that that's possible. I think that they reach 40 and they think it's kind of downhill from there. But I think that I love, you know, that you and I are kind of changing the narrative with that. And instead, when you are 40 and over, it honestly can be the best years of your life. It really can. You know, and I know that may be a radical idea for some people, but it really, really can. It's just about shifting your mindset about what's possible for you. And I hope that people look at you and I and see, you know, if they can do it, like I can do it too. You know, I love that you took your background of pharmacy and you combined it with, you know, health and fitness and midlife and helping women, and you're doing what you love. I love it. And, you know, mine is similar. You know, I took my business background from being an attorney. I took all of that knowledge similar to you. And then I'm helping women build their online businesses. Like, it's so cool when you look backwards. Like, you never can connect the dots moving forward, right? We all want to know. We want to know the next steps. We want to know what's going to happen, right? But you can't see the full picture until you actually take the steps, right? You don't have any clarity without action. As moms, especially as the moms I work with, they just want to know what's going to happen. And I feel like you don't. And that's part of the beautiful journey about it. You just need to surrender to it. You know, you were saying that now you have opportunities that have opened up with working with doctors and stuff like that. Like, would you have ever thought that?
No. No.
And it just happens. Once we take a step back, though, right? And stop holding on so tightly to things and allow it just to kind of flow and put ourselves out there and, you know, tap back into ourselves. And I love, too, how you and I were talking before, too, how, you know, you're showing up as yourself to show women who are like you, not like other women in fitness, but like you, what's possible. And I love that, because I think that a lot of women that I work with think that it's too late for them, or they look on Instagram and they think it's already been done before, right? I should have done this. I was just talking to a woman. She's like, I should have done this like 6 years ago. It's too late now. You know, there's already a ton of people talking about, you know, the area that she wanted to go into. And what I told her, and you're a living example of that, is, but no one's done it like you, right? Like they need you, and they need your story, and they need your struggles for you to share that too, and for you to share your wins and your successes and your journey, because that's what people resonate with. You know, authenticity has never been more craved and needed right now. It can be that simple. Sometimes we get lost in the like business lingo and marketing and all of that kind of stuff, but it really can be easy when we just remember who we are. Like, there's a great quote that I love so much, and it's, I can't remember who said it. It will come to me. The brain fog of 40
at 3 a.m.
Exactly.
It'll come at 3 a.m.
Exactly. But it's something like, you know, you were meant to be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of anyone else. And that can be really hard to stay true to yourself, especially on social media. But that's your guiding light, right? Like, to just stop Stop comparing yourself. Stop looking at what everybody else is doing and tune back into yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm on episode like 34 of this podcast, which
is amazing.
Apparently, like doing it every single week past a certain point, I've actually like hit milestones I didn't even know I was hitting. But the consistency is hard. But I will say that, you know, before, when I was trying to build a business, I was following all of the find your niche and do the algorithm things and create media like this. And it was so cookie cutter and I just felt so, it just wasn't genuine and it wasn't speaking to me, that I would actually, it would cause paralysis in my moving forward, because it just didn't it didn't align with me. And so I was making things fit me instead of allowing me to be myself. And so once I stopped doing that and acknowledged, okay, I might launch a program that doesn't go the way I want it to go, but that doesn't mean it's over. Or I might, you know, do this podcast and I have like 23 people listen to the first episode. That doesn't mean I should quit. I'm not going to be the, you know, the Kelsey Brothers podcast off the bat. Like, that's just not going to happen. I'm not a celebrity. Thank goodness for me personally, but like, I'm not going to have this massive following that's going to launch me and catapult me into podcast awards and things. But I consistently did it and kept going because I'll get an email. Oh my gosh, I listened to this episode and it really, like, you hear me. Or I would get a message. Today I got a message in the coaching challenge that I'm doing. There was a message that said, oh my gosh, I listened to your podcast episode this week. And it was so good. And it's so, you know, and so having that, it's like, this is why I'm doing it. It's not for filling stadiums worth of fans. It's for the women who are having experiences like I've had, or, you know, can resonate with somebody I'm talking to and say, wow, this, you know, like, so the two of us talking, hopefully there's somebody out there who has a dream to be an entrepreneur or try to figure out how to grow something they love into something they can make money off of while they're still being a mom. And, you know, and listening to this and saying, I can do that. That is actually something that I'm capable of doing.
I love it. I love that you pointed out that it got easier when you stopped pushing so hard, right? And you just let it be easy. And I also love that you keep coming back to your why, you know, and it's these messages from these women. It's helping these women. I mean, you sound similar to me. You know, when I started, I was like, if I could just help one woman, you know, like, it will be worth it for me. And I feel like that's how I show up. I try to show up every day. I'm like, how can I serve? How can I help one woman see what's possible for her? See that she's already enough. See that she has these gifts and talents that she can share. And, you know, the other thing is too, I think that sometimes, and I don't know if you experience this, but I know from the women I work with, the word online business or the word business in general can seem really scary and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because, you know, or immediately someone thinks, I don't have a business degree. Oh my gosh, I could never do that. I don't know anything about business. And I think you're a beautiful example. You just said that you didn't either, right?
Yep.
You have a science background. And look at you, showing up, doing amazing things, helping women, you know, giving them a voice and letting them be seen and heard. I mean, that's where the magic is. I mean, that's amazing.
Thanks.
You're
yeah.
welcome.
I appreciate that. Well, and for me, I remember having to fight with my doctor's office because I knew something wasn't right in my body. And they kept telling me, your blood work's fine. You're not in menopause. And they weren't listening. Like, I just had a period 3 days ago. I know I'm not in menopause. You're not listening. There's something else that's wrong. I'm waking up soaking wet. I'm up at 3 a.m. every morning. I'm gaining weight in ways I never knew before. I'm anxious. I'm vicious. Like, there's all these things that are new in me that aren't, there's got to be a reason. And I kept thinking of how hard I had to fight and advocate for myself. And I have a healthcare background. Like, I worked in hospitals.
Wow, so true.
Am married to a physician. I know what it looks like in a doctor's office visit. And if I have to fight this hard, I can't imagine what it's like for women who don't have the science background or who don't have a background in healthcare or who don't know to keep pushing, that just take the word of their doctor and just say, I guess this is just the way it's going to be. This is what getting old is like. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure you feel the same way about helping women start businesses. Yep. It doesn't have to be like that.
Wow. It doesn't have to be like that. The other beautiful thing is too, is you and I have kind of already done the work, right? Like, don't get me wrong. the clients that we work with, you still have to do work, right? I'm kind of like a little bit of woo, and I'm also a little bit of work. Like I believe in both. But I mean, you're not just going to sit on your couch and manifest, feeling better when you need hormones. You're not just going to sit on your couch and manifest, building wealth in your business when you need to actually take steps to do things. And I wish that I could tell people it was another way. I think there are a lot of people out there selling that to women. And I think it's really a disservice that, if you just manifest hard enough, if you just, visualize it hard enough, then it's all going to come, and that it just doesn't work. Right? It unfortunately, you have to take the steps too. There has to be action behind it, inspired action. And I feel like you're a really great example of that. I feel like for you and for myself both, it's kind of like we did the background work, we did the work. And now when someone works with us, they kind of get to start where we are, right? Like you've already done all of that. You went through all of that. And so you can distill, as can I, when it comes to business, like decades, weeks, months, years into days for someone, when you can help them and when you can show up and you can teach them and you can work with them. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, you were saying about you were getting overwhelmed when you took a business course about what's your niche and stuff like that. I always think the best thing to start with is what's a prior version of yourself, right? And that's who you're serving. Like that's all you need to do is what's a prior version of yourself? You're best suited to serve a prior version of yourself. And so when you just keep it easy, and I love that's what you're doing. I feel like it's really great. And I feel like it's so needed, especially today. But I mean, there is still, fear around it. How you were saying, it's uncomfortable to, show up on Instagram and stuff like that. I mean, do you have any ways that you push past that? Or because I still feel that too. And I mean, I'm a business coach and I'm on Instagram and I teach, help people with Instagram too. And I still feel it too. I mean, you have days where you're like, oh, I really don't feel like doing this, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, so for me, the hardest part was I had to put down the idea that I had to present myself some other way than I show up in the world every day. Anybody who sees a clip from us in a reel, because this is audio, but I know I'm going to be in short videos and I'm still hair pulled back. I'm in my warm up. I'm going to go work out after we're done with this. This is how I am. And if I can't present myself like this, then I'm not being genuine. And so I kept saying to myself, I have to have my hair done. I have to have my makeup on. I have to have a nice outfit before I record, before I post a reel, or before I share a story. And I just never did it because I'm never dressed. Like the occasional few times I'm dressed up, it's for a reason. And I'm working up until the instant I have to leave to go do whatever I'm dressed up for. Mm-hmm. So I don't have an hour and a half to make content for the month. That's just not it's not my schedule. It's not my life. So as soon as I put down the need to show up in a certain way and just show up as myself, people are going to either listen to what I have to say and like me, or they're going to keep scrolling. And there's plenty of people in the world to just keep scrolling and still have people that you connect with. And that's what I had to just remind myself. But for me, being on Instagram, I've never had a problem going on Insta stories and talking about things. My biggest issue is talking in person.
Really? So what do you mean talking in person?
Terrified to talk in person. No, this isn't in person to me. This is not in person. I'm talking about when I go, so for a very long time, I was Mrs. Dr. Byrd. And so when people would say, oh, what do you do? I would say I'm a stay-at-home mom. I was a pharmacist by trade, stay-at-home mom by choice is what I would tell people. And even when I started coaching, I wouldn't tell people that that's what I did.
Are you standing in front of your mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at you? Perhaps you're lying awake at 3 a.m., body betraying you with another hot flash or night sweat, wondering if this is just how life has to be now. As a pharmacist and women's health coach, I've walked this path, both personally and alongside hundreds of women just like you. That's why I've created 2 powerful ways to reclaim your midlife journey: the Women Mastering Midlife community and personalized one-on-one coaching. In our community, you'll find your tribe, women who understand exactly what you're experiencing. Together, we'll navigate perimenopause and menopause with evidence-based strategies, twice monthly group coaching sessions, and a judgment-free space to share your story. But if you're craving deeper, personalized support, my one-on-one coaching program offers dedicated guidance tailored specifically to your body, your symptoms, and your life circumstances. No more Googling at midnight, no more trial and error with miracle solutions that leave you frustrated and depleted. Are you ready to transform your midlife experience? Book a free discovery call with me today. You will find the link to schedule in the show notes or check out www.womenmasteringmidlifecoaching.com for more information. In just 15 minutes, we'll explore whether community membership or one-on-one coaching aligns best with your needs, because you deserve to do more than just survive this transition. You deserve to thrive. Join us in aging boldly, beautifully, and on our own terms.
I would still say I was a stay-at-home mom. And so I don't know if it was the nervousness of owning what I was doing or being embarrassed that people would look at me like, you're what? Like, what is a menopause coach? Like, do you hold somebody's hand while they're having a hot flash? Like, that is what I anticipated would be the response. And when I finally stepped into it and had a conversation with somebody at a Christmas party about what I do is important, it led to a very, very strong conversation. And I thought, wow, like when I tell people what I do, I don't get made fun of. And I don't, so it made it easier. Once I got over that initial fear of judgment, I can handle judgment online because I can just scroll it or delete it or block it or whatever. But the fear of judgment in our small-ish town where a lot of people know my husband through work, or my kids at school, that was what I was most afraid of.
Oh my gosh, I can totally relate to that. I feel like for most people, when you really get down to it, it's about like 3 to 5 people that you're really afraid of their judgment. And when you can kind of like push past that, it makes all the difference. I made a post on Instagram about that. And I was like, I feel like I have done so much work to help me show up fully and aligned. And, it's a constant practice, like coming back to yourself. And there's still like 3 to 5 people where I'm like, what will they think? And I wish that I could tell you that I was like past that, but I feel like some of that just never goes away. I feel like it's just always going to be there. And I've had so many similar experiences to what you're saying too, good and bad. I remember there was a guy who came up to me and he's like, oh, so, how's it going? Like working and, being in trials and all that. And I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that anymore. And he gave me such a hard time. Why would you throw that all away? Why aren't you doing that anymore? And so I get some of that. And then I also get these women who like in secret are like, if I could, this is what I would do. And then me, I'm like, well, then do it.
Yeah.
And then they always say, but it's not that easy. Like I work a job or, I could never put myself out there and all that. And I think the important thing is you can take these tiny steps. It doesn't need to be this like all or nothing. So many of us feel like that. It needs to be this massive business and you need to be building an empire. That's what we see online. Build an empire and don't burn out and all of that stuff. But you don't need to do that. You can build a beautiful business that's a tiny, aligned business that works for you from home and also be a great mom. And you can wear your cozy clothes, right? I love wearing cozy clothes too, but I have to tell you, one of my, I'm not going to say resolutions because you said you hated it, but goals is to get dressed more often out of my cozy clothes because I read this article and it said it does something for your confidence and it boosts your confidence, it boosts your mood, all of those things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try because I fell into this thing where that's all I was ever wearing. That's all I was ever wearing was, workout clothes all the time. Like even when I would go, maybe meet friends for a nicer lunch, like I would wear workout clothes. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what someone wants to do. But for me, I was like, what if I just started, maybe getting dressed in the morning, maybe, putting a little makeup on, like how would I feel? So I'm like a week into it. So I'll keep you posted.
Yeah. I'll ask you how that's going.
The workout clothes too. Don't get me.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is I need to work out in the morning and I don't. I'm a lunchtimer worker outer. I can't get up at 4:00 in the morning and work out. So like I'll do my workout around noon because I need to eat, but I don't want to eat at 6 a.m. So that's where I get caught up because I don't want to get dressed and then undressed and then redressed. So then I just end up And then I'm like, oh, it's time to pick up kids. So I look like this. But I have teenage girls who they're not mean in any way about mom wearing whatever she wants. But if we're going to the mall or something, or we're going to go out to lunch, I know if I put on jeans and a nice sweater, then they'll be like, oh, mom, you look really pretty today. So I don't do it because they're like judgmental of me in my leggings. But I also know that there's a chance we're going to run into somebody from high school or middle school or somebody's mom, and they don't, they would prefer, if I have nice clothes to wear, I should put them on is the thing. But for most days, it's because if I put on clothes, I don't work out. And totally to me, being consistent with a workout is the most important thing right now.
Agreed. For me, I do my workouts in the morning. Otherwise, I would fall into the same thing and the other thing is too, where I am, it's really cold right now. So the other reason I would just stay in my workout clothes is because I would then walk my dogs in the afternoon. And I'm like, who wants to walk in jeans or like a sweater or whatever? So that also makes a difference, because you're right. That's a priority for me too, to move my body. And I feel like if that's what works, but that's what's great about having, being able to stay home and have a flexible business, you can wear your workout clothes and nobody cares.
Yeah.
That's where the beauties are, right? You don't need to get all fancied up and dressed like you're going into work every day.
Yeah. No, I mean, I wrote emails yesterday. I have emails set to go out that I wrote on a treadmill in a weighted vest because that's what I had time to do. And so I think, by our genetic makeup as women, we're able to multitask very well, way better than our cohorts. And as moms, we have to multitask, and we have to be able to look at a schedule and know you have to get from A to B with this amount of minutes before this practice starts or this game, or, we are masters of schedule manipulation. And if you want to add a business in, you can do it if you're intentional with your time.
Yes. Yep. I think so too. And you multitask, just like you're saying. So you add it on to something else. So if you're taking a walk, maybe you can do something during that time. Maybe it's make an Instagram post, or maybe it's respond to emails or send a voice memo. Or if you're walking on your treadmill, similar. Maybe you can send your emails. Maybe you can make a PDF guide. Maybe you can, send a voice memo to clients. Like, it has never been easier. And I love that you just gave that example, because that's the possibility today. And I think a lot of people still don't understand that that's possible. Like, they listen to you saying that and they think, oh, well, it's probably only she could do that. But anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. I am a firm believer that every woman has gifts. They have talents. They have something that needs to be shared with the world. So many of us, like you said, have that hunger inside. And I feel like it's time, right? It's time. Our best years are not behind us. They're in front of us. And it's just taking these tiny, small steps. I mean, I've heard before that it just takes 20 seconds of courage, right? Just over and over again. Just give yourself 20 seconds, make the post. 20 seconds, send the email. 20 seconds, press record on the podcast. 20 seconds, upload it. Over and over. If you just start telling yourself that, you start to reprogram your brain. And then once you take those actions, you start seeing other things that are possible instead, because you're starting to take those actions. And, your mind looks for evidence of what you tell it to. So when we're telling it it's possible, it's going to find all of those. When you're telling it's not possible, it's going to. A couple of years ago, I got a new car, and it was gray, and I had never had a gray car before. And I remember my kids and I were all like, oh my gosh, there's gray cars everywhere. I never knew there were gray cars everywhere. And that's just an example of when you tell your mind something. We started seeing it because that was our new reality. So once you step into getting healthy in midlife, starting a business in midlife, you're going to see more of it, and you're going to see that it's possible for you too. It's just about kind of that subtle shift.
Yep. I tell people when they don't want to work out, just go work out for 5 minutes. And at 5 minutes, if you want to turn off the workout, or you want to get off the treadmill, whatever, then do it. But 9 times out of 10, the endorphins kick in and you stay. The only times I've ever actually quit, 5 minutes in, the next day I was like COVID positive. So it made sense that I wanted to quit. But I just say okay, I'll give it 5 minutes. If I don't want to do it after 5 minutes, I've done 5 minutes. And at least I've done something. And for the most time, you end up staying. So that's what I tell clients all the time. Give yourself 5 minutes in a workout. If you want to quit. But you tried.
I love that. And I think that's for anything in life, right? Again, is when we get to midlife, I think we can feel like our world is shrinking, but we still can choose to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. And it's going to be uncomfortable. It's like lifting weights. You have to be uncomfortable, push through that discomfort to build up that muscle. Similar to starting a business, similar to doing anything new in life. We fall into these habits, and just because they're habits don't necessarily mean they're healthy. But we fall into these habits and we stick to what's comfortable, and it's going to be uncomfortable. But it doesn't mean it's bad for us, right? It's going to be uncomfortable when you get on the treadmill for the first time or when you lift the weights, but that's a good thing. That's a good thing. You're growing, your muscles are growing, your mind's growing, when you start a business, all of these things. And it's just part of the process, right?
Yeah. And I think, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about like the women that go to the gym in January for the first time and they end up at like some big giant gym full of, muscle dudes who they think are staring at them and they're just frustrating them that they're taking their space in the weight room or whatever. And that's not really the case, honestly. When you ask, especially, I like to find a corner where there's more women, but even the men, if you ask them, like, could you show me how to use this? Or could you help spot me? Like, they'll all be very helpful and accommodating. And I think that's the same in the business world. We look at these people in this space and we're like, there's too many people here. I'm not a pro. I can't go in there and be comfortable. I should just leave. But if you asked, people love to help and they love to offer a hand. It's amazing to me, especially if you find the right people. I mean, the people who don't want to help you and want to hold you down aren't your people. I mean, there's going to be those people everywhere. But if you think about like a group of women, I know there are women that do what I do in my circle, and we message each other all the time and we ask each other questions and we bounce things off each other. And I want nothing but the biggest success for them, and they want the same for me. And there's room for all of us and all of our crazy ideas.
I love that. I completely agree. I feel like the world, the universe, whatever you want to say, it's abundant. There is more than enough for everybody. It's like that, saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. I feel like when you're thriving, you're inspiring other women to do it too. You're showing them what's possible too when you step in to your abundance and purpose and all of those things. And I love that that's the message that you're sharing too is collaboration is key, right? Working together, it's key. It's not her versus her or her versus me. It's us, and we're all together. And how can we all lift each other up to see all of the greatest potential for all of us? Because I'm convinced that, when women thrive, like that's how the world changes. I mean, if women just ran everything, it would be such a different world.
100%.
And when women, step into their purpose, when they start building wealth, they do amazing things with it. I mean, the women that I know, like they give back to charities and they make such a difference with the wealth that they're building. I think there's this, thought in a lot of women's mind that, money's dirty or it's something that you aren't worthy of. But it is, because it's what we do with it. It's incredible the things that we do with it. Money isn't good or bad. It's just a magnifier of what you already are, right? So yeah. I also love that you said too is how you found your people. I'm a firm believer that like attracts like, especially when it comes to Instagram. So you're going to attract people that you're like. So when you're putting your true authentic self out there, you're going to attract people that are just like that. And I think another stumbling block for a lot of women, especially the women I work with, is people pleasing. And I think that was hard for me for a really long time too. Like I wanted to be for everybody. I wanted everybody to like me. I didn't want to offend anybody, and I think especially when I was working as a trial attorney, that really came up a lot too. Like I just wanted to be a good worker. I wanted my bosses to be happy, and I wanted the judge to be happy, my clients to be happy, all of it. And it's a real shift, when you put yourself in the online space, because when you are trying to please everybody, when you're trying to be for everybody, you end up being for nobody. And that's a weird concept, I know, for some people, because you think to yourself, but I'm helping everybody. But it is saturated. There are a lot of people on there. And for you to be heard and for your voice to truly make a difference, you need to be you, right? You need to focus on serving your dream client and not just serving everybody, which is really hard. Like even for you, like that you're focusing on women in midlife, right? You're not focusing on all women. You're focusing on women in midlife. And you could have focused on all women. But instead you chose to focus on women in midlife. Why did you decide just to focus on them?
Because I think that, well, one, it's my experience. And two, I think, so, you know, when we're girls in middle school, we're taught about puberty.
Yes.
Then we're taught about our reproductive system. And then we have postpartum care if we have children. And then all of a sudden, there's nothing. Women's healthcare just falls off a cliff. Like, you've had babies, there's no more purpose for you. We don't really care what happens to your body. Like, that's how I felt. And if you think about even just the terminology, like, I was reading somewhere that when they came out with Viagra and they were talking about the word impotence, it was a hurtful word. And so they changed it to erectile dysfunction to make it feel better for men. I need to find the article. Don't quote me in case but anyway, it's one of those things that it stuck with me. And I was like, okay, but we have things like ovarian insufficiency and like cervical incompetence. And, you know, there's all these things, vaginal atrophy. Like, these are all terms that we tell women that are just so demoralizing and scary and just makes you feel, I don't know. So I was like, we need to rewrite this narrative because we need to stop feeling insufficient and that, you know, parts of us are atrophying. I mean, there are physiologic things that happen, but at the same time, there's also beautiful things that happen when we reach the end of our productive years. So that's why I just felt like there's this gaping hole. And I had started talking about this 3 or 4 years ago. So I was like right on the beginning of people starting to talk about it. So like the big docs weren't quite there yet and launching it and talking about it all the time. I think 6 months after I got my certification, Halle Berry talked about menopause. And I was like, oh, here we go. Like, it's going to end up everywhere. And I appreciate that. I really do. Because I think that we need to talk about it more and we need to destigmatize it a lot more. But I definitely felt like it was a weird thing to talk about because we're of a generation that we were taught you can be anything you want. You can have it all. You can be the mom and the astronaut. You could be president. Look at what but nobody ever told us how to do it. They didn't give us the tools to do it all. And they also didn't tell our counterparts that they were going to have to pick up some slack. And I think that there's a lot of things that have to get broken down on both sides. Women need to start asking for help. Our male counterparts need to start, you know, helping out a little bit more with the domestic. I see a generational shift in that, but we're kind of this weird generation of like trying to do it all, but not having the tools or being told how. So
I think so too. And I love too that you can tell how passionate you're about it. And that's a lot of the things that I do with the women I work with too. You can tell like you like lit up and you were so like excited and animated when you were talking about like what you're doing. And I feel like that's where the energy is, that's where the magic is, and that's why you're loving what you're doing and having the success that you're having. Like everybody has that, right? And you have tapped into it. And I feel like I love that you also said it's kind of what you needed because that's so true. Like how can we show up and help someone else is such a key too. Even if you just help one person, right? I mean, that's a big reason why I do what I do. I'm like, learn how to build flexible income. And I don't want income to sound like a dirty word. Okay? Like, if I can help one person find their purpose and lean into that and help other women. And the other thing is, too, to show my kids, right? Yeah. Like, my younger daughter, like, I remember she brought home this thing. She brought home this, like, sheet that she had to do at school. It was a worksheet. And said, Mom, you know, look what I wrote. And this was maybe a year or two ago. And it said, I'm so proud of my mom. She's changing the world. And I was like, oh, you know, and I started like crying. And I feel like, you know, we sometimes underestimate the effects that we're having on our kids too. And, you know, you and I are showing our kids and anybody, any mom, you know, who has that hunger inside too can do the same, that there is a way to navigate both, right? You can have something for yourself. You can also be a great mom, and it is uncharted territory though, what you're saying. Like we really are kind of like paving the way in our generation, because a lot of us were told you can do it all. And so a lot of us felt like we had to do it all. And I think that's why you're seeing so much burnout and so many women unhappy too, especially when it comes to midlife, because our kids are leaving. So then we're sitting there with what's next for me? What am I doing? What, are my best years behind me? And it's like this, you're kind of like almost shifting your identity too, because so many of us have poured so much into our kids, which is beautiful and amazing. But it's like you sit there and you're almost like stuck. Like, what are those next steps that I take? And it can be really hard sometimes, just kind of facing that reality that kind of a chapter is kind of like closing a little bit.
And that's why I think it's important for women to start looking at it before you launch your kids. Like, don't wait until my kid is out. If I had waited until Maddie was in high school, or actually both of them. So Abby's 2 years behind. So if I wait till Abby gets off to college to start something for myself, I'd be so disappointed that I let that time go. And like, I don't have 80 hours a week to put into building a business, but I'm setting a foundation, so it's kind of like building your dream home versus a spec home. Like I'm building my dream home. So my foundation might take, a whole year, and there might be a lot of rain. there might be some snowstorms that completely halt production, and then the next year we get the walls put up or whatever. But then the end of it starts to fly, and then all of a sudden you have this dream home that you've built. And that's kind of what I've looked at. My trajectory for this is that I'm laying a really slow going foundation. Maybe there's like 2 people putting brick by brick down for my foundation right now. But then, as they get older, driving, doing more things on their own without me needing to be always there to help, I will have more time to put into it. And then when they are gone, maybe then I'm traveling and I'm doing speaking engagements. Maybe I'm going to more conferences. Last year, there was the Menopause Symposium every year. The Menopause Society does a conference, and I was signed up and registered to go. And then it turned out that it was the same time as Nutcracker casting was going out. And we've done Nutcracker since my oldest was 7. I've been there for every casting. And I thought, the conference will be there. We're running out of Nutcracker castings. And so I was like, I really need to be there if my kids get the part of their dreams, to celebrate them. And if the kids get something they're not excited about, we're going to have the you bloom where you're planted conversation, and we're going to get ice cream, and we're going to talk about how we're going to show up and be our best selves. And so I needed to be in the room when that happened. And so I took a step back, but I know that next year I could go, or the year after I could go, and that'll be another building block of my journey. So I think that women need to remember that even if they have only a little bit of time in the beginning to start their business, to go ahead and start it. So that way, when it gets time that your kids are launched, you have this plan that's already in place.
Yep. I completely agree. And the other thing is too, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Just like you said, you're taking these small steps, you're building a firm foundation, and you still have the flexibility. So you didn't have to go to that conference. You could have still went, but you didn't have to go. And that's what's really amazing about it too. And you said, maybe you see speaking one day in your future and all of these things, and you can start planting the seeds now. And then you're going to have your complete, you're going to set yourself up for success, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. You have to take these small little aligned steps to get you to where you want to go. And the other thing is too, it's not a straight line. I wouldn't be surprised if your journey has evolved. A lot of women's journey evolves. You try something and then you figure out if you like it or you don't like it. And then you take the next step forward. Then you figure out if you like it or don't like it. Like, it's totally okay. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. And I know that's like the big F word for so many women. They feel so afraid to fail, but it's part of it. And it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Like, failure is only feedback. Failure tells us what worked and what didn't work. We use it to take our next inspired action using that 20 seconds of courage. That's it.
Yeah. My first group coaching program, it totally tanked. Like it totally tanked. But I also was thankful that it tanked because the model that I was using really wouldn't have fit my life. When I think back on it, like if I had 24 or a dozen women join this group coaching program, what would I have done? You know, it wasn't a set like 6 or 12 weeks. It was this community support, like we're always going to be doing this. And I thought, how am I going to lock myself into this when I don't have the bandwidth for that right now? And so I was actually very, very glad. And then when I built the 6-week challenge, we knew that there was a time frame. I have somebody working on it with me, so I'm not managing it all by myself. And then, you know, the community that I built is much less, it's a lower cost, less touch. Right. So for me, I don't have to, you know, put as much energy in as I had initially decided to do. And so there are reasons that things don't work, for sure. Oh, I'm a firm believer.
I am too. Everything happens for a reason. And I feel like you learned from that. It was a learning experience, and you learned it's important to learn what we want, but it's maybe even more important to learn what we don't want. And you don't know. Like I said, I think so many people get in this analysis paralysis and they feel overwhelmed on taking the next step, and they want it to be perfect before they put anything out there, but it's not going to be. Things are going to shift, things are going to evolve, and it's about like embracing that and just kind of going with the flow and seeing what works for you and seeing what works for your life. And it seems like that's just what you did. So then you pivoted a little bit, and now you have someone else doing it with you, and you have a 6-week challenge, and you're going to see how that goes. And if you like that, and if that worked, you'll do more of it. If it didn't, you'll pivot again. And that's okay. That's what's amazing about all of it. It's almost kind of like you're taking the guardrails off and you're just kind of seeing what works.
Yeah. And I think it's important for women to talk, to do the internal work of like, what is my bandwidth? So, you know, I was talking with my challenge partner about like what to come from this. And if women come out of it and want one-on-one coaching, how many I take? Like that's a big, you know, how much work can my plate hold? Because I am of the mindset, and I am of, I don't know, just my feelings of wanting to help everyone. I won't say no to people. I won't say my list is full. And then what'll end up happening is I'll get burnt out and hate it. It'll become something I have to do instead of something I want to do. My kids will suffer because I'll never have time to just actually put the stuff down and devote to them. My husband will take the brunt of my bad moods. You know, like there's this trickle effect. And so I think another thing for women when they're starting a business, I'm sure they work with you about like how much should I actually be doing right now in the beginning, especially. Yes.
And it's different for everybody, right? And sometimes you may overextend yourself, and then you'll learn the next time and you won't as much. But, you know, I think it is really important to start from the beginning and say to yourself, like, how much time do I have for this? And, you know, break it into smaller increments and take those tiny steps and then reevaluate. There's always needs to be this like reevaluation process and then move forward from there. Because sometimes you're right. I mean, you still are, you know, you have kids at home and you want to be there for them and you want to be present for them. And I do too. I mean, I struggle with that too. You know, I want to help everybody. And I don't ever want to say that I'm full either. And even when I am, I want to try to make the time to help other people too. And I feel like that's a constant struggle. And even, you know, you and I were talking off camera too about pricing. Pricing can be really hard for women too. I mean, so many women just do everything for free. They never make a firm offer where they're charging anything. And that also can lead to burnout. And it can lead to resentment, and it can lead to you know, not wanting to do it anymore and it's not about the money. Okay. I'm not saying it's only about the money, but you should be getting paid your worth. I mean, as we said, men would never have this problem. They would immediately say, this is how much I'm worth. This is how much I'm charging. Take it or leave it. I mean, and oftentimes they're less qualified than you, or they're less qualified than me, but they don't have that hang up like us as women do. And it can be really hard sometimes, and it can be scary. But I think it's important. And again, it's building that muscle. It's building that confidence muscle to say those prices and then see what happens. Because the thing about business is you have permission to make changes whenever you want to make changes. It's your business. Be a good boss to yourself, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I if I were to talk to somebody about a pricing and it was like, well, this is just really out of my range and this isn't what I can do, then maybe we custom create something that fits your budget and my value of time so that we can, still get the help you need in a different way. And I think that pivoting like that is also something that women, like they just take the no and they're like, oh, she can't, we stop hard at the no. And that's not necessarily what needs to happen either.
Well, no can be really hard. As women, we hate no. We just want to hear yes all the time. We want to make everybody happy. So I feel like coming to the realization that you're going to hear a lot of no's, and that's okay. And don't take it personal, because it's not about you, it's about them, right? Like, it's not like, maybe they have something going on in their life right now. Maybe they don't have the time. Maybe they don't have the money. Maybe they are dealing with something that you don't know about. Maybe they, are just stretched too thin. So many times, I know that I do this too. If someone says no, and it doesn't even need to be about business, it can be a normal life. If, you put yourself out there and someone says no, you immediately put it back on yourself and you feel bad about yourself. And what did I do wrong? And then you start overthinking it. And to just have a practice of stopping yourself and saying, it's not about me. It's fine. It's not personal. Move on to the next. It makes a big difference, but it's hard. It's hard. But just to remember, hard. Everybody hears no. And you're not going to get to the yeses and to help the people that you're truly meant to help if you aren't going to get some no's along the way too. And again, you learn from it, right?
Yeah, this is like probably a little bit of a rabbit trail, but thinking back from when we were talking a little bit earlier, I had my first troll experience, like just a meanie on social media. And I started second guessing what I was offering, what I was doing, like am I confident? Like, am I capable enough? Am I educated enough to really help people? And I had to stop myself because I had posted about our challenge that we were doing on Threads, and my post was rethreaded by this person with the comment of, these menopause influencers and their woo-woo jargon just to make a lot of money off of you, just like totally going off. And so I decided to dive a little bit deeper, and I looked into this man's profile, and he was a personal trainer, I guess. But every single post on his Threads account was reposting someone else's posts and shredding them. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to stop guessing. Like, I need to stop taking my worth into question because of the nonsense of someone who's basing his entire platform on taking other people down. So I blocked. It was very easy and very simple to do. But, there is going to be negativity out there in the social media world. And I'm sure there are people who, and the people that like, they never comment, they never like, but then they know everything you're doing. Those people. There's a little bit of that too. And I think you kind of have to grow a little bit of a tougher skin if you're going to have any kind of business on social media, and just not be scared to lay it all out there and be vulnerable, because it will hit the people that need to hear it.
Yes. Your why has to be bigger, right? Your why has to be bigger than some random troll. I mean, I've heard before that when you get your first troll, that means you've made it. So congrats.
That was awesome.
I mean, you're going to get that. And I think you're going to get that off social media too. When I was working, I had a lot of clients who loved me. And I remember I had one person who really didn't. And you're not going to be the right fit for everybody. And there's also some people who their whole accounts and their whole businesses on social media are just literally trolling people. And that's how that's their business model, which personally I think is disgusting. But, when that happens to me now, which it happens to me too, I remember the first time it happened to me, I had and it was when I first started out on social media. So, you're more sensitive, I think.
Yeah.
And I was posting something about moms, and there was this guy, and he said, essentially, who are you to be doing this? You're a terrible mom. You shouldn't be posting. You should be spending all this time with your kids instead. And it just went on this terrible rant. And I was like, oh my, and the same thing, I started questioning everything. I'm like, oh my God, does this make me a terrible mom? Should I not be doing this? Am I a bad mom because I'm trying to do something for myself and trying to show my kids what's possible in these other moms? Should I stop doing it? And I had a moment where I was like, oh my gosh. And I remember talking to my husband and he's like, no, he's like, that's exactly why you should be doing it, to show other women, and you've helped all of these women. Think back about that, right? Instead of this one random person. So now I feel like I bless them and I block them. That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
You bless and you block and you move forward, because if anything, at this point, I feel sorry for that person. Like, what does that person have going on in their lives that they're going to spend their time to troll other people on social media? It's sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Oh yeah.
And it's not personal.
No, it's not. I had patients in the pharmacy that there were they didn't want to deal with a certain pharmacist. And so they would, I'd have to swap with them and go to the counter and talk to the patient. Or even they didn't like me because I denied something. And I was very much, I don't want to say I took pride or enjoyment, but I was very strict on controlled substance distribution. And so I would watch where people were going, and I would watch how frequently they filled things or how often they were going on vacation. Mm-hmm. And I always told people no. And then I would call the doctor's office and say, were you aware that this person got this drug in an ER 2 days ago? And then I would have to void their prescriptions and hand them back. Those people did not like me.
No.
I had people that did not like me doing my job. And so I think, and because that was I got a W-2, I had a title, I had a license on the wall. It was okay with me that people would yell at me or that people would dislike me, or, I had people shake crutches at me or throw bags at me and all these things. But for some reason, social media, somebody tells me, if somebody criticizes my menopause coaching business, I take it so much more personally. And I don't know, we need to put all that aside and just keep going.
Isn't that so funny? I wonder why there's a difference. Like, I know I've always felt like that. When I was an attorney, I was in like a white male world when I was an attorney. And I was this like young girl, coming out, and I thought I knew things and I realized I didn't, but I worked really hard and I wanted everybody to like me. And I mean, I had the worst experiences with attorneys, being cussed out, screamed at, all those things. And it was so disheartening and so hard. Like, I would take it so hard. And I think that that's one of those things that is hard for it to ever go away. And I think you just give yourself space when you are the recipient of that type of negativity, and then move past it, because it happens everywhere. It can happen. The other day, I was driving. I was at a hockey tournament with my son. I was driving and I was up in somewhere, I don't know, Michigan or something. And I was unfamiliar with the roads. I like waved at this guy and he kind of let me out. And what I didn't realize is he wasn't letting me out. He was giving me the finger. So, I mean, it happens everywhere, right?
It's everywhere.
These women, we want everyone to like us. We want to people please all the time. And it is something we need to kind of get that tougher skin, like you said, to start showing up, because we don't want to let those people dictate, us stepping into our purpose and our passions and helping other women and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's too bad for those people. They must have really sad home lives or something. Yeah. I try to say, and I say that to my kids all the time, like, we don't know their struggle. They get so mad at me if they come home and they say so-and-so is mean to me. I'm like, well, you don't know what's going on at home. You don't know what they're dealing with. And they're like, well, I just want to complain. So I need to, say that to myself. I don't know what they're dealing with. I don't know what's going on at home, and just press on, because I think we need to, there's a little bit, I'm sure you do a little bit of the woo-woo work with women of like
100%
getting into the mindset of knowing your value and knowing that what you're doing is important and that you are providing a service.
Yes. And I think it is hard because sometimes it's not tangible, right? Like, I don't coach people on creating products, like physical products. I have in the past coached brick and mortar businesses, but I don't do that at this point. And I worked with a lot of business owners that did all of that too. But at this point, it's more of a service. And I think that's kind of a harder shift too, is like, well, what am I really selling? And you feel like you're just selling yourself. Yeah. And that's hard. It's hard for women to sell themselves. But what they don't realize is they have years and years of wisdom, knowledge, all of these skills that they've built up over time, even just being a mom. I mean, think about all the things like, maybe you organize, maybe you cook, maybe you bake, maybe you meal plan, fitness, all of it. There's women in this online space that are building beautiful businesses, building wealth and making a huge difference, doing these things. Like it's incredible. It really, really is.
Well, so I think we could probably talk for like 3 more hours, but in the interest of everyone's time, I don't want them to like look at it like, oh my goodness, they talked for 2 hours. But it was so fun having a conversation with you. And I think, we didn't even dig into the list of questions that I had ready for you, because I think this was so much more important to have a conversation around women being ready to, in midlife, find something that they're passionate about and making a business out of it. So I don't mind sharing my story. Sometimes I felt like you were interviewing me a little bit. I was like, oh, you should have your own podcast, Allison.
I did have my podcast. I took a break. I'm bringing it back. I really do love interviewing women, but I loved this too. I loved talking to you. I love everything you're doing. I think you're such an inspiration, and you're helping and you're making such a difference. And I feel like you're showing people what's possible too. You can take this thing, you can find your passion. P.S. If you don't know what your passion is, I can help with that too. But you can find your passion and you can turn it into something beautiful. So I love what you're doing. And I thank you so much for having me on here. And yes, I could have talked to you forever too. This is the amazing thing about social media. You and I met now.
I know. Awesome. I know. We'll continue these conversations off of recording, of course, in the future. And thank you so much for coming on. And I think that's a beautiful place to end our chat for today. So thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me today. We will be back next week for another episode of Women Mastering Midlife. Until then, find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife or Miss Victoria Byrd, and join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community to continue our discussions. You'll find links to what you've heard here today, as well as ways to connect with us in the show notes below. This podcast is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. Please note the hosts, guests, and experts featured on this podcast are not your personal healthcare providers, life coaches, or advisors. The content should not be considered as professional, personalized medical, psychological, or prescriptive advice. This podcast is not a substitute for consulting your physician, therapist, local pharmacist, or relevant professionals to discuss your specific concerns and situation. The topics discussed should not be used as the sole basis to diagnose or treat any medical condition, make significant life changes, or make important decisions regarding your health otherwise. Women Mastering Midlife is not responsible for any undesired outcomes resulting from actions taken based on the information provided in this podcast. The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guests only and do not represent any of those other individuals or entities. Always consult with qualified professionals before making significant changes to your health regimen, lifestyle, or medical plans.